The first casualty of war signifies the end. What many fail to realize is how fragile our world is and how closely held together everything is, working in harmony and balance. One small move over here could lead to massive changes over there. And while many think of casualties being a person or an object being destroyed, the first casualty of war is something much more fragile and much more important, and it signifies that the end is near. So in this video, I'm going to break down what the first casualty of war really is, why it's the most important piece holding things together, how it's under attack and you are under attack because of it, how to spot it, how to defend it, and most importantly, how to protect yourself from being caught up in it. So let's go. All right, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mark Moss, and I make these videos to change the way you think about money because almost everything that you have learned is wrong, and we are going to talk about that today. What is lost? The first casualty of war, something that you may think is wrong. Now, before we jump in real quick, it's a casualty of war. There's a lot of things going on today. We don't know what to believe, who to believe, and I have a special deal for you, a special event. I am having a live conference in Dallas, Texas, and not too far off. On May 6th, there's a link down below. I'm having 15 of the best speakers in the world come and explain to you what they think is going to happen over the next couple of years and what you should be doing to build, grow, and protect your wealth and your personal sovereignty. Market Disruptors Live, my event. It's in Dallas coming up. There's a link down below. Check it out. I hope to see you there. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so to understand what we want to talk about today, we want to talk about a word that you might not expect to hear on a finance channel, but it's important to finance. It's actually the most important thing, and that is this word, trust. Trust is like glue, all right? Without trust, we don't really have anything. It binds everything together. As a matter of fact, it's so integral into the financial system, into our economic system, into our political system, that it was actually put into the Declaration of Independence. And so we can take a look at that. Of course, it says right here, and for the support of this Declaration of Independence, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. They pledge that to each other in an oath of trust, holding themselves together. It was that important. They had to put it right there. And of course, we have to trust other people. We have to trust the people that are making our food. We have to trust the other people on the road. We have to trust the people that we're doing business with, and so forth. We have to trust our institutions. These are the bodies, the government bodies, the large corporations, the institutions, the schools, the media, etc., that they have our best interests in mind, that they're not trying to work against our best interests. Of course, we may not be able to do that. And most importantly, we have to trust our money. What is backing the US dollar? Some think it's still gold, hasn't been gold for a long time. Some people think it's the military. What's really backing the US dollar is trust. We can see that right here. The US dollar, the reserve currency, is backed by trust. Trust in the U.S. courts, trust in the superior privacy protections, and trust in a robust financial services sector. So it's all based off of trust. When you see currencies fail, when currencies implode, it's because nobody trusts them anymore. They won't even bother to pick them up off of the ground when trust is lost. Now, we have to trust all of these things for society to work. If we have pure anarchy, there's no trust. It's not a good way to live. Who can we trust? Well, all the institutions that I mentioned that we're supposed to be trusting, we've been finding out over and over and over that we cannot trust them. As a matter of fact, they've proven so untrustworthy that they have actually started working our best interests. Of course, Facebook, lots of people trust Facebook. I think about 3 billion people trust Facebook, and they can't be trusted. Facebook data harvesting scandal widens to 87 million people. They were selling their data, 87 million people. It's massive. That's about a quarter of the amount of people just in the United States alone. Of course, our institutions like our banks. We trust our money. We trust our life savings with the banks, right? I use Wells Fargo. Well, Wells Fargo was fined the largest fine in history of any bank, $185 million, for improper account openings. They were opening fake accounts on customers' accounts so they can meet their quotas and get paid. They paid the largest fine in history, $185 million. So we can't trust the banks, but we could trust the Federal Reserve, right? The The Federal Reserve that manages the currency for not just the entire United States, but really for the world, because it's the world's reserve currency. We could certainly trust those people at the Federal Reserve, right? Well, they told us that when the great financial crash happened in 2008, they told us that in order to bail the world out, it was going to take $700 billion. Then they added another $700 billion on, so it was about $1.5 trillion is what they told us that they created out of thin air in order to keep the markets from crashing. Well, we found out the Fed's bailout was not 1.2 trillion like they told us. It wasn't 1.2, no. Instead, it was 29 trillion. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not like a little mistake. That is not a white lie. That is straight up fraud, in my opinion. They tell you they're going to create 1.2 trillion. They create 30 trillion. We can't trust them. We can't trust any of the institutions that we have today. Now, as I said, the first casualty that signifies the end. The first casualty in a war is always truth. Truth is always the first casualty of war. These people knew it way back then, and that's the case. Now, the way that they destroy truth is typically through propaganda. You've probably heard of that being used before, of course, in wars. It's used in times of peace. Against you. That's right. We can see here in World War II, in the 1930s and 1940s, we saw the rise of totalitarian states in the Second World War. They're arguably what's been called, quote unquote, the golden age of propaganda. Now, we can see propaganda has been used pretty much since the beginning of time. People are always trying to manipulate other people. But the time after World War II is what they call the golden age of propaganda, where they really got good at it. And on top of for the war on truth, not only do they lie to you, not only do they manipulate you, trick you into thinking other things with propaganda, they also censor the truth. Now, I like the saying that says you don't prove a man wrong by ripping out his tongue. You only prove you have something to hide. That is exactly what censorship is. Now, I don't have to tell you how big of a deal that is. Of course, you're watching this on YouTube most likely, and I have to censor what I say all the time. You hear me struggling with this all the time. Now, this is 17,000 YouTube channels were removed. 17,000. Now, this was back in 2019. This was a long time ago. What were they removed for? They were removed for hateful content. Now, hey, I don't want hateful content. I don't agree that people are mean. I think people should be nice to each other. We should love each other. I want to treat everybody with love and respect. So maybe that's okay. Should we remove hateful content? The problem is, what is hateful? My daughter hates vanilla ice cream. Should we remove all vanilla ice cream content off of YouTube? She hates it. It's hateful. You see what I'm saying? Who determines what's hateful? Where is that line, and who manages that line in the sand? And the problem is, first there's attack on truth through propaganda, manipulation, lying, tricking, etc. Then there's censorship, shutting down any opposition, and then it leads the door to something much more scary that actually has happened right here in the United States. Now, you probably know that if you're in China, under the social credit score system, which of course they're trying to bring to the West right now, if you're in China and you speak out against the government, they might disappear you, right? Like you might just fall off the face of the earth. But that happens in communist China. That could never happen in the United States, right? We have freedom of speech on those things, right? Well, maybe, maybe not. You might be surprised to find out that right here in the good old land of the free, we have something known as the Sedition Act. Here we have of 1798, and this basically talked about people that talked out about the war were found guilty of that. Of course, they used these emergency powers during war, as I said. Truth is the first casualty of war. Here we have the Sedition Act of 1918. So check this out. This is the United States here, okay? If anybody, they amended the language, made it a crime. It was a crime to utter, print, write, or publish anything that's disloyal, profane, or abusive language about the United States government, or even to disagree with its actions overseas. So, I don't like that the United States government wants to start war with Russia and China, for example, or Russia and Ukraine, or bombs Syria, or whatever it may be. Well, that means I could be disagreeing with the U.S. actions overseas. This was actually a law in the United States. So when there's a war, they could put these things into place. So let's think about this. If it's a war over information, and of course the government's losing that because people watch channels like me, I'm small, people watch big channels like Tucker Carlson, people watch Joe Rogan, 200 million people a month. They have lost the narrative, they've lost the war on information. So how could they win the war? Well, they can't take over all these alternative news sources. What they could do is they could pass a law for it to be illegal to say anything bad about the government, to utter, print, write, or publish anything that's disloyal. Now, of course, they can't just pass those laws arbitrarily. They might need something like a war. They might need an excuse like a war in order to pass this. Hey, this is history, all right? This is what I'm talking about. This is the Sedition Act. It goes on and on. There's even more of these. We also have the Smith Act. The Smith Act made it federal law. This was in 1940. That made it a criminal offense to advocate the violent overthrow of the government or no one should have violence, right? No violent overthrow of the government, or even to organize or be a member of any group or society devoted to such advocacy. So the trucker protest, there's one happening in the United States right now. If you support that, if you organized it, if you participated in that, they could throw that at you. It's illegal. But, of course, they need something like a war in order for that to happen. Now let's move on to an actual war. How timely is that? So we have the Ukraine and Russia. Okay, here's the problem. Because we've been lied to for so long, because they've openly admitted to running psyops on the American people, because we can't trust the institutions like Facebook, because we can't trust institutions like CNN, we don't know who to believe anymore. Remember, trust is what's broken. So, with the Ukraine and Russia, do you know what to believe anymore? Is it a crisis that's made for TV? Could they potentially be using this war so they could pass some restrictive laws like the Sedition Act or the Smith Act? I don't know. I'm asking a question. Do you think that could be the case? You can leave me a comment, let me know. I mean, it looks somewhat fishy. For example, the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, he has ties to the World Economic Forum. Of course, our good old buddy Klaus Schwab, we've talked about that a lot. So Zelensky is part of the World Economic Forum, which of course has an agenda to install leadership around the world and turn things into a one world government, globalism. So Zelensky is part of that. But of course, who's Zelensky fighting against? Putin, right? Yeah, well, does it make sense that also Putin is also part of the global leaders for the World Economic Forum? And what's even more fishy, if I might say, is that as of a few days ago, Vladimir Putin was listed on the World Economic Forum's website. And as of today, I was preparing for this video, at the time of this writing, it's now gone. Sorry, but we can find the pages you're looking for. So Zelensky and Putin were both listed there, and now Putin is now gone. Does that mean it didn't happen? Well, good thing we have some things that we have backed up. As a matter of fact, here's our good buddy Klaus Schwab talking how Putin is actually part of the World Economic Forum Young Global Leaders. Let's go ahead and cut to that.
Will be part of the Young Leaders Initiative.
Mrs. Merkel, Tony Blair, they were all, even President Putin, they were all young global leaders before.
So there you have it. You heard directly from Klaus Schwab, everyone's evil uncle, saying directly that Putin is part of it. So Zelensky's part of it, Putin's part of it. They deleted him. That looks pretty fishy. It makes me start to not trust them. If you had a business partner, you had a wife, a girlfriend, if you had a business partner that you thought maybe was embezzling, and you said, hey, what are these charges? Can we take a look at this real quick? And they said, yeah, sure, here they are, here's what it was. Okay, that brings trust back. If they said, whoa, you don't need to look at that, never mind that, then I would lose trust. It's kind of like what is happening. And on top of that, we see all this information about a war, but then we see things like this being spread around online where we have pictures from 3 years ago of the President Zelensky, and they're all being used again right now. Now, this might just be a mistake. I'm not saying this is or isn't some sort of conspiracy. Maybe it was easier just to use those pictures. They're still relevant. That could be the case. My point is that trust is the very first thing that's lost, and we don't know. On top of it, we have, if you're getting your news from TikTok or Twitter, I get a lot of my news from Twitter. The reason why is because we can't trust the mainstream media, so I like to trust people that are boots on the ground, showing me what it's really like with live video, right? Well, the problem is in TikTok, we're seeing misleading videos that claim to show the invasion of Ukraine. So they're saying on TikTok it's a live video. They're saying it's live, so people are tuning in thinking they're watching something live, but the reality is it was recorded previously. And they're doing this for engagement. And so it gets very, very difficult to know who to believe. All right, so who should we believe? What do we do about this? Well, the government wants to be, of course they do. Of course they want to be our single source of truth. How nice, right? Wouldn't it be great if we could just trust them? We could just take them at their word. Of course they would never do anything that was against our best interest, right? Sort of like the Federal Reserve. That's what, 1.2 trillion instead, 30 trillion. And so we have, here we have Jacinda Ardern. Of course, she's another young global leader from the World Economic Forum. She's telling you exactly how it is. Let's go ahead and play that clip.
Otherwise, dismiss anything else. We will continue to be your single source of truth. We will provide information frequently.
So there you have it. Exactly what she said is that just ignore everything else. Just don't bother to read anything. Just listen to them. They will tell you everything that you need. They will be your single source of truth. We even saw them go as far as to say that you must not, pretty strong words, you must not do your own research when it comes to the science. Trust them. Let them be your single source. Don't do your own research. Don't look into this. Don't think critically about this. Just rely on them 100%. This is on Forbes. They put that out. How about no? How about no? How about I'm always going to do my own research? More about that in a second. Of course, we also have the fact checkers, so don't worry. The fact checkers on social media, they're going to tell you what's true and not, right? Well, are they? Because Facebook admits that the truth that the fact checkers go find out, it's not really fact, it's really just opinion. It's one person's opinion. You know what they say about opinions, right? Fill in the blank. I'm not going to answer that. Leave me a comment and let me know if you know what the answer, what they say about opinions. But they admit it's not about truth, it's about opinion. And then, of course, we have this movie, Fahrenheit 451. If you have not read the book or watched the movie, I'd recommend, of course, read the book if you can. But there is a movie. It's about, you can watch kind of the whole story in about 2 hours. It's a pretty good movie. It was made a couple years ago. I'd recommend it. Basically, the premise is that because there was so much information, nobody knew what to believe. They destroyed all sources of truth, that it basically led to a global civil war and kind of, put the whole world in turmoil. So the answer was to destroy all the information and get rid of every book and let the government have the only source of truth. And because now there wasn't different types of information, nobody could fight over it. They would all believe the single source of truth. And so they had to burn all the books, hence the name Fahrenheit 451. Again, it's an awesome book. You should definitely read it. At least, like I said, at a minimum, you should watch the movie. It's worth it. All right, so what do we do? What do we do about this when trust is gone, when it's lost, when it's been lost out of sight? Remember, I said it's the glue that binds everything together. So when it all falls apart, things obviously fall apart. Society tends to fall apart. So for example, I want to start a business, I need to provide for my family, I want to do better for myself, for my kids, my grandkids, etc. I start a business, I risk my life savings, I risk my sweat equity, but then I can't trust people. I can't trust people I do business with, I can't trust the vendors, I can't even trust the state and the police who have been put there to protect and to serve, because now they just let people steal anything they want in California as long as it's under $900. So now stores are having to close down, businesses are having to close down because they've gone broke, because they can't trust the people coming in the store, they can't trust the police to do their job, they can't trust the government to protect them, they can't trust anybody. That's what happens. Society starts to fall apart. Let's say that I decide to save up some money and I buy a rental property, which is pretty good. I like to own rental properties. And, then I can make a little bit of extra cash flow. Then I have a retirement plan, whatever your goal is with that. But then what if I can't trust my tenants? What if I can't trust my tenants to not thrash my house? I can't trust my tenants to actually pay the rent. I can't even trust the government to allow me to collect the rent or even kick a tenant out if they're not paying. How crazy is that? Of course, that's exactly what happened here in California. And so when trust is lost, we start to see society breaking down. We can't cooperate. We can't have trade. Of course, that's how societies are built up, through trade. Now, Mises, Ludwig von Mises, from the Austrian School of Economics, one of my favorite economists. If you haven't read up on Mises, you should start with Human Action. But he talked about something called the crack-up boom. If you watch my channel on a regular basis, then you've heard me talk about this. He says that money sits at the base of society, and it's trust. Trust is the glue. We have to have trust in the money. Of course, if you've ever held any money in your hand, any dollars, then you understand right here, it says right there, in God we trust. All others pay cash. I've seen that on a sign somewhere. But in God we trust. Again, trust is at the base of all of our currency. But again, how can we trust our government? How can we trust the Federal Reserve when they have continued to erode our purchasing power down to almost nothing? $10,000 in the bank a couple of years ago buys you about $7,000 worth of goods today. That means they've stolen $3,000 of your $10,000 in just a couple of years. How can you trust them when they do that to you? Well, it makes it very difficult. Now, Ludwig von Mises talked about the crack-up boom, and he said, but then the masses wake up suddenly. It's gradually, that's how trust falls, right? Gradually, I'm starting to doubt, I'm starting to have concerns, and then you find the piece of information. Gradually and suddenly, finally, the masses wake up. They became suddenly aware. Suddenly, I realize it. I'm aware the fact that inflation, the theft of my government, is a deliberate policy and will go on endlessly. And then a breakdown occurs. The crack-up boom appears. Gradually and suddenly, that's what happens, and that's where we're going. Of course, in Venezuela, in Zimbabwe, billionaires are literally starving on the street because, of course, their currency is worth so little. So how can you protect yourself from this when you don't know where to turn? How can you defend yourself and your family, your decisions from this when trust has been completely lost? Well, you have to practice something they don't teach you in schools. As a matter of fact, schools teach this out of you. You have to practice something called critical thinking. Critical thinking. So, well, you have to think. Henry Ford said that thinking is such hard work. That's why so few people do it, right? Thinking is hard work, and so we have to practice critical thinking. So ask yourself a couple questions. So, for example, why is this war happening now? What would the outcomes of this war be? Who may stand to profit from this war? What policies are they trying to push that might get further advanced if we go into a war like this, right? Who benefits from it happening now? So we want to analyze the situation, talk about it, communicate it, think about it creatively, have an open mind about it, right? Who are the people involved? What are the ulterior motives here? Who else stands to benefit from this? When you start asking those questions, you're going to get to the answer. You'll be able to protect yourself. At least that's my opinion. What do you think? Leave me a comment and let me know. Of course, like I said at the beginning, I am having a conference live in person. Come hang out with me and about 15 of the best and brightest speakers in the world. We're going to be talking about what's going to happen over the next couple of years, and more importantly, how do you build, grow, and protect your wealth, your health, and your personal sovereignty. This event is like no other event happening in the world right now. It's our second annual. There's a link down below. I highly encourage you to get there and build that community. MarketDisruptorsLive.com. There's a link down below. But like I said, leave me a comment. Let me know. Are you thinking through this? Are you asking yourself these questions to think critically? What do you think about what's going on in the world today? I'd love to hear your opinion down below. Of course, as always, give me a thumbs up on this video if you like it. And if you don't like the video, maybe I said something that you didn't like. I get it. Go ahead and give me a thumbs down. That's okay. But at least leave me a comment and let me know why. And that's what I got for you today. All right, to your success. I'm out.